Hello, and welcome to The Connection. This podcast is about understanding and building the connection we have with others and with ourselves. I hope that through this podcast, you'll be able to have more joy and fulfillment in your life. I'm your host, Jared Hurst. This week is a really special episode. It's my second interview episode. And hopefully I'm getting a little bit better at doing interviews, so that way you can have a more enjoyable experience. So this week I'm interviewing a woman by the name of Jana McKinney, and she is awesome. She actually does breathwork. And in case you're not familiar with breathwork, you're about to hear all about it in this interview. So we'll start from scratch and kind of teach you what it does and how it works and how it can impact your life. But the main takeaway that I want to talk with you about before you listen to this interview is just how important tools like this are in helping us rewrite our life in a more efficient manner. As you've heard me talk on the podcast before, the first step in life is awareness. And then once we become aware, we get to choose how we're going to react to the things that are affecting our life. And those things that we need to be aware of are our beliefs and our identity. And then we've talked a lot about different ways in which you can change those things over time through repetition and through great habits, which is definitely something that needs to be part of your tool belt. You need to have good habits and these tools that help you change the way you think. But in addition to that, there are things that can supplement your growth, that can supplement the way that you are changing and help accelerate these changes in your life. And one of those things that I've found that has a dramatic effect on our ability to change things quickly is breathwork. I've had some really transformative experiences with it, and I'm excited to dive into it more because it sounds like after my interview, I realized there's other things that can have really dramatic impacts on my life, not just in my identity and my belief system, but also in my everyday health. So, without further ado, here is Jana McKinney. From the moment that I thought about doing interviews on my podcast, I thought, who would I want to interview? What kind of people would I want to talk to? And for me, breathwork was one of the first things that came into my mind. What's interesting is I just went to this event at Yin on Fire down in Cedar City, Utah. Ended up running into a lot of different people to do breath work, and it came to my realization that there's a lot of different methods of breath work out there that I had no idea about. So for people that are listening that either have never heard of breath work before or don't know about yours, can you tell me a little bit about what you do and how maybe it differs from other methods that are out there?
Yeah, well, so I actually do all the different methods of breathwork because I offer a certification course where people can become breathwork facilitators through me and my program. And I truly believe that to be a good breathwork facilitator and to be able to help all the people that need your assistance, you need to know all the different types of breathwork. And so I think it's really important because not everyone can do the big, deep journeys where it's intense and there's, big emotional releases. There's a lot of contraindications with some of those intense types of breath work. And so to be able to do the small daily practices that can just help with your nervous system or being able to just know how to breathe correctly and teaching that to your clients is very, very important. So yeah, I teach everything from A to Z when I teach my certification courses. But my classes that I teach every week that sell out are what I call an emotional breathwork journey, which is that intense breathwork where you lay down and you do specific breath patterns for over an hour, and it releases DMT, which is a natural hallucinogenic, which is in our bodies already, but it releases that throughout so that you get into this beautiful meditative state where you can rewire your brain, help heal past traumas and PTSDs, get rid of depression, anxiety, And, people are feeling emotions and releasing pent up energy and stuck emotions that they've been holding for years. And so that type of journey is kind of what I'm known for, but I think every facilitator should know them all because you never know who's going to walk through your door and you need to be able to assist any of them.
That's awesome. So that was an
Yeah.
absolutely beautiful explanation. Um, I've often I've I've started to recognize that there's all these different things out there that allow us to rewire our brain faster than the typical way. Without nerding out too much, there's neuroplasticity is our mind's ability to rewire, and normally it's done through repetition, and that can take a really long time to rewire your brain. But the stuff that you're talking about, you can have a lot more effect in a lot shorter time. What kind of experiences have you had with that, or things that you can share? Anything that you yourself have had, or any of your clients that have really stand out to you?
Oh man, I could go on for hours about this. But yeah, the point of how you said that to rewire your brain usually takes repetition. It's actually oh my gosh, I can't even say the word repetition and or intensity. And so being able to use breath work with the intensity on the brain that really makes it stick is what makes it turn one session into something that can change your life. Whereas like going to therapy takes repetition. It takes over and over and over, right?
Yeah.
So I've had so many sessions with clients where it's just one session has shifted their life completely. So the first one that pops into my head is, and I share this one a lot, but it was about a 20, I think he's like 20, 22-year-old young man, what was referred to me by a doctor. The doctor called me. We have a connection. And so she knew what I did and everything. So she called me just, hey, will you be willing to work with this young man? We've been doing everything. We've tried all the medicines. We've tried, therapy. But he's still struggling so hard, so bad. And so of course I say yes. He comes to me and we do a one-on-one breathwork session where we do like the transformational journeys. And just in that one session, well, before we started the session, he, let me know that this was his last ditch effort. He was like saying that he didn't want to live anymore and he already had plans to make sure that he wouldn't be on this earth anymore. And so, of course, I, was like, oh man, we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. But I take him through this journey where we do the breath for about an hour. And I also am a Reiki practitioner. So I did some Reiki on him as well, which is a type of energy work that just kind of sends love and light. And as he's doing the breath and I'm doing the Reiki on him, he had just big awarenesses, big epiphanies. He, released some stuck emotion that he'd been holding for his whole life from past traumas and past experiences that happened. And so he was crying, screaming, letting everything go. And then when the session's over, I just, had the feeling that I also needed to teach him how to breathe correctly. And, from day to day, most people actually are not breathing the right way. They've either increased their pattern or they're holding their breath or they're breathing really shallow or they're breathing up in their shoulders instead of down from their lower lobes of their lungs. And so I just taught him the correct way to breathe, encouraged him to do that throughout the day, notice when in life, he would shift out of the correct pattern, what things were affecting him on a nervous system level, and then make that breath correction throughout the day. And that was it, one session. And then a few months later, well, I did check on through his doctor. I said, hey, have you talked to him? How's he doing? And she said, oh, he's doing so great. But then a few months later, he found me at an event and he came running, like skipping, running through the door. And he's like, I saw you were going to be here. I just had to come and say hi. He's like, I've got to let you know how great I'm doing ever since our session. And he, told me all the things he was doing. He's in school. He's found new friends. He's excited about life. He's he wants to live. And it's just so powerful to have those stories of like someone who really hated their life to now thriving and celebrating their life just from breath work.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I have so I'm on a real estate team. We have like 100 people, and we one of the men that owns our title company, he does breath work. And so he did this breath work session with all of us like 6 7 years ago. That was my first experience with breath work. And I learned really quick that you don't go to breath work when you're like half asleep, because I ended up falling asleep while I was doing my first session. But I wake up at the end, and I had a coworker that he's like, I had a conversation with my dead grandmother. And then I had another one. He's like, yeah, I talked with my 12-year-old self. And they were saying things like, if I could do this every day, my life would be completely different. Like they were trying to figure out how they could do this just regularly all the time. And then my second session I did 4 or 5 years later, I ended up having like a conversation with people from my childhood and getting forgiveness around things, and being getting apologies around things, and I had these imaginary conversations, but it was incredible the way I felt. Like that high went with me for like a week after that, where I just noticed, and I know it. I've had to do additional things to work through those issues. I did a treatment called ART, which is accelerated resolution therapy, and
Mhm.
I think it's the same stuff from what I can tell. You go into a dream state there as well, and both experiences felt very, very comparable as far as how they affected my ability to process stuff and feel those emotions. It's incredible to me how something like this can have such a dramatic impact on our life.
Yeah, it is. It's so powerful. And it's just like you said, it's like the fast track because you get right into the subconscious immediately. And so once you're in that subconscious, you start realizing what patterns and what things and beliefs are running your life and running your thoughts and really controlling the way you live your life and react to what's going around you. And so once we can get into that subconscious and unlock it and reprogram it, it changes everything.
That's awesome. I talk a lot on my podcast about beliefs and identity and how we need to change those things. And I'm very much becoming a believer that there are these outside resources that can help us fast track those changes. And we definitely need to be taking advantage of those. So, with everything that you do, um, what would you say is the best place for somebody to start? How do they know what kind of breath work they should do with you? It sounds like you have some other offerings outside of breath work. Like how does somebody know where they should begin on something like this?
Yeah, well, I think I break breath work down into three different categories. And so the first one is just breathing correctly. So I would say that is the place to start. Make sure you're breathing the right way and that you haven't let life and mirroring the people around you shift the way that you breathe, that you are in control of breathing the correct way. And that just doing that alone can make a huge difference on your mental health and the way your physical body works
Mm,
because there's actual breath patterns that are linked to depression. There's specific breath patterns that are linked to anxiety and so on. So as we can shift out of those breath patterns, we can shift our health. So I would say that's the first place to start is breathing the correct way. And I can talk about that if you want me to go into it deeper.
yeah,
But then, do you want me to go keep going? I was
I
going to
do
say, or
have
do you
a
want to hear
quick question on
the
that.
other categories?
Well, yeah, why don't you give me the other categories and we can head back to that.
All right, all right. So then the second category I would say with breathwork is to practice daily, train your lungs, your respiratory system daily. So that's taking 5-10 minutes a day to do a specific breath pattern. And there's tons of different ones you can do, but I'm sure a lot of people on here have already heard of Wim Hof. That's a good one. Pranayama is like the breath patterns they do during yoga and those specific kriyas. And then, lots of therapists teach like box breath and 4-7-8 breath. And so there's tons of specific practices you can do to just really strengthen your respiratory system and train yourself to be a more efficient breather.
Mm.
And then the third category is the journeys, like I talked about, with that young man that came to me. The journeys are an hour or 2 hour session where you do the breath in a specific way to be able to release that DMT, to go on a journey, go into that deep meditative space where you can do deep healing.
That's
So
awesome.
those are the three ways that I say you've got to do all of them, really.
Yeah. That's interesting about how breathing can affect like your emotional state. I have an issue where I just stop breathing.
Mm.
You're familiar with sleep apnea.
Yep.
I notice it just while I'm here talking to you. Like I'll be talking and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I need to breathe. Like I haven't breathed for a while.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, that's a stress response, and it happens because you have gone into like a fight or flight response sometime in your life. And so now you carry this pattern of like, when I get a little nervous or I need to really think about something or I'm a little stressed, I'll hold my breath for a moment. And if you do it at night, you definitely are doing it during the day. And if you can correct it during the day, you can actually get off your sleep apnea. Like if you have a machine, or if some people that have to use a CPAP for sleep apnea, you can actually get off of that by training and doing breath work during the day.
That's awesome. So fascinating. I've wondered this for a while. I've tried doing like box breathing and stuff because I felt like it's something that I should be able to train. Like everybody else is able to just breathe normally. And I every time I go in for surgery, they yell at me. They're like, "You're not breathing." And I'm like, "I'm breathing the way I normally breathe. I don't know what you're talking about." But they always get mad at me about my oxygen levels and stuff whenever I have like a knee surgery or something because I just don't get enough oxygen. So that's fascinating. I'll have to see
Yeah.
about meeting with you for that.
Yeah. Well, and we can teach you the correct way to breathe now, and let's see if my favorite thing is noticing when during the day you shift out of that pattern, the correct pattern, because then it gives you insight to know like what things are stressing you out in your life and what things maybe you can shift to avoid um, getting out of that specific breath. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah, that does. That's
Yeah.
really, really
Breath awareness.
breath awareness that you wouldn't think because I always talk all the time. People listening to my podcast are like, oh boy, here we go. I always talk about awareness, and awareness is the first key to changing our life. Because a lot of the times we're acting on these patterns, we're acting on like these programs. And when we become aware of them, then we actually get to make a conscious choice if we want to continue acting on those patterns or not. So I love the fact that breathing actually has a way of helping us become aware of ourselves. That's crazy to me.
Oh, it's huge because our breath is tied to our nervous system. And so if you get, stressed out, it's going to show up in your breath.
Mm, that's so cool. Is there anybody out there that shouldn't be doing breath work? Like, is there anything that, like, if you're pregnant or have a heart condition or anything like that, where you shouldn't be out doing this kind of thing, or is it pretty much good for everybody?
So it depends on the type of breath work. How I've got those three categories.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, breath awareness, everybody can do. Everybody can know the right way to breathe and practice doing that, and then be aware of when they shift in and out of that and try to correct it. Everybody can do daily practices. So the second category, they definitely, no matter what you have, you can try to shift your breath and play with it, manipulate it to your benefit. Okay. So those first two categories, everybody on this planet can do. We were all born with breath. We can play with it, right?
Yeah.
But the third category, those journeys, that one does have some contraindications, and it's mostly just like exercise. If your doctor has told you to not do intense exercise, then maybe intense breath work is not for you. It's not so much about what happens during the breath work. It's besides that it just feels like a workout. We're breathing fast, we're breathing deep. And so it's just like maybe going for a big walk or a light jog. And so if that is on your list of not to do's, then those breathwork journeys are not for you. And so
Okay.
that's usually people with severe heart issues. Like if you have aneurysms, or if you had a recent heart attack, if you have high blood pressure. If your blood pressure is being treated with medicine, then and it's in a controllable level, then you're okay to do breath work. But if it's untreated and it's still high blood pressure is on the list. Epilepsy, if you are diagnosed with epilepsy, that's another one that you maybe shouldn't be doing. Glaucoma, because it puts the blood pressure increased to the back of your eye, can also be a contraindication. But pregnancy is one that actually you can do, even the intense breath work, you can do up until about 20 weeks. And then after that, you want to work with your doctor. Like, okay, can I exercise? Should this be something that I start to taper off? Um, just because we don't want to cause any contractions or early labor,
Yeah.
but it's just like you would compare it to exercise.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I was thinking as you were talking, I was like, they probably some benefits to the first two techniques as far as like being able to help you through labor and everything, I would imagine. Because I mean,
mhm.
you see in the movies the breathing patterns that they have you learn. I don't know if they still teach that anymore or if
They
that's
do.
just do they. So I imagine that kind of stuff would probably be helpful, if nothing else, for helping you to like calm your nervous system and get into a state. It was interesting to me. I was down at this Yin on Fire, and this guy started doing these breathing patterns for us, and we did these breathing patterns, and then I went home and I started thinking about it, and this all these light bulbs started going off in my head because I'm a bit of a nerd. I love Andrew Huberman, and he talks about how when you're trying to calm your nervous system, that you want to have a longer exhale than an inhale because it creates more space in your chest cavity, which allows your heart rate to slow down. And your nervous system is used to, if your heart slows down, that means that I'm in a safe space. And
Mhm.
so I started looking at all of these breathing patterns that he was teaching us, and they all had a longer exhale than an inhale. I was like, oh, look at this. And then it was also interesting to me. There was things that we would do where we'd make like a noise or we would do a hum. And I've read some things that say that humming or stimulating the vocal cords actually stimulate the vagus nerve, and that the
Yep.
vagus nerve will help settle our nervous system. So it was really cool as I was like started making all these connections. I'm like, dang, this whole breathwork stuff, it really, it's backed by science. It's not just you know, something that's out there somebody made up just to make money. It's like legit.
Oh, for sure. And that's why I got so obsessed with it is the science. I wasn't as much into all like the woo and the spiritual stuff, but I came from a physiology background. That's my bachelor's was in, and then plus I was a health coach. And so when I started seeing all the science, I was like, holy crap, this is something I can get behind. Also, because I just felt amazing and had some major transformational experiences as well. But there's so much science. And I'm actually teaching a Breathwork 101 course in a few weeks that's free if anyone wants to join in on that. But I pull up so many medical journals and psychological journals showing the science proven of like why this works and how this works. It's so
That's so
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to come to that course, what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Um, Two ways, I guess. So on my social media, Get Living Breathwork, or just Get Living, there's a dot between every letter. On Instagram, I will be announcing when we launch that. We're just wrapping it up, getting it ready. So it'll be in the next couple weeks. Or you can go to my website, which is getlivingwithbreathwork.com. And in there, you can sign up for the newsletter, and I'll announce when we do that as well. And that Breathwork 101 is a free 3-day training. It's live, so you can be on there asking questions, and it's all just like a Facebook live streaming.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to
Yeah.
check that out. I
Yeah.
obviously I need to go fix my breathing now. I need number 1 and 2. 3, I'm excited about and was already on board with, but now I'm like, all right, I need some 1 and some 2 in my life.
Yes, yes. We'll teach it to you. Yeah. And we do teach that in that Breathwork 101 class.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to share, things that you think would be important for people to know or whatnot?
I guess the biggest thing is just how simple it is, and just learning just some real basics can be transformative, life-changing. And the more that you practice breath work, the more you'll start seeing big changes. So don't let it be something that's big and scary. It's very simple, but it is more than just breathing. Like there's an actual science and methodology to which breaths you do and how you do them for what results you want. So let us teach you.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely from my experience with it, it's limited, but it's been transformative. So it's way more than just like you say, than just breathing. So I think you've done an excellent job of articulating how transformative it can be and why it can be. So I really appreciate you coming on and discussing this with me and helping spread the word about breathwork so more people can change their lives.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Jared. I appreciate it. It's fun to chat.
Thanks.